morning, everyone. I'm Christy Stokes with the Greater Downtown Council. Great to see our panelists here with us this morning, and great to have you as participants with us on this day where we finally get a little bit of rain. How about that? So it'll be nice to be able to see that. We have a great panel with us here today. As many of us know, we have seen an increase in homelessness and mental health issues, especially during the pandemic. And these panelists work closely with providing services to the homeless and can share more about their stories and the services that they provide and how we can all work together to provide for a strong and healthy downtown community as well. And so I will welcome anybody who is participating today. If you have questions, please throw those questions in the chat and I will be able to share those with the panelists. If you have any comments you want to make as well, we can always share those too. If you just even want to say good morning to everybody, feel free to do that. It's always nice to have some of that interaction during our presentations. So we have Lee Stuart with us from CHUM. Good morning, Lee.
Good morning.
Great to have
everyone.
You with us.
Thank you.
Seth Courier from the Damiano Center. Good morning, Seth.
Hi.
And Jordon Johnson from Lifehouse. Good morning, Jordon.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and I will say I have to share this little tidbit with everyone because it was something new we all learned. These are all former musicians. They all played trumpets. How about that? We learned something that they all had in common besides all of the work that they do too. So kind of fun to hear that. So we are going to start off, I think, so each panelist will give a little bit of a presentation and then we'll open it up to a Q&A afterwards. So we are going to start with Lee being able to share her presentation. So again, welcome Lee and thank you.
Thanks very much. We'll get this going. Hold on just a sec. Since I don't know who all's in, I always start at the beginning. My name is Lee Stuart, and I'm the executive director of CHUM. CHUM runs an emergency shelter, family shelter, drop-in center, street outreach, food shelf, and the Steve O'Neill apartments. And we also have a legislative advocacy part of our program. My purpose today is to tell you a little bit about what's going on with CHUM and a little bit about what happened with the pandemic as well. We always start with our mission statement, people of faith working together to provide basic necessities, foster stable lives, and organize for a just and compassionate community. There are 44 faith communities that make up CHUM. We go from very far west Duluth to very far east Duluth, all the way actually to French River. Our vision and why we do the work is a place where every person has food, shelter, dignity, and hope, where racial disparities are eliminated, and where everyone lives in a just and compassionate community. So most of you know about us as the Downtown Shelter, Emergency Shelter and Drop-In Center. There have been a lot of changes in that. I've been at CHUM about 8 years now, and we're seeing a much higher acuity of homelessness. When I came to CHUM, only about maybe 60% of the people were homeless for the first time, and now only 25% are. So that's a big change in the trend of homelessness. Obviously, everyone who's here has very low incomes, live in extreme poverty. The other thing that's increasing in the shelter is about 2/3 of our guests have a mental illness or addiction of long duration. It's not a short-term thing. It's something they live with day in and day out. And we see about 1,200 people a year. Our shelter is really designed for about 25 people, but we have 80 beds, and we don't turn people away. They can come, and we haven't had to put sleeping pads out, but we have 80 beds. We'll allow people to get to those beds in the daytime as well as the night. Food shelf is our other major one. Last year we distributed 6,500 packages to 2,000 households, so you can do math there. About people came an average of 3 times. 388,000 pounds of food out our door, in our door, and out our door. And recently we've started a delivery service. We're calling it CHUM to Go. We're doing 120 packages a month of that for people who are homebound or otherwise unable to get down to one of our brick and mortar locations. And also with the support of Gloria Day Church and 10 local farms, we're going to be able to distribute 40, the quantity equivalent to 40 community support agricultural shares through CHUM. There's a charge against food shelves that often we're not very healthy, but CHUM is one of them, the healthiest ones in the state, if not the country. COVID, this is our graph of COVID during the pretty much reflected what happened in all of St. Louis County. We had our peak in December, and about what was interesting about this is only about 33 of the people that had COVID actually came through CHUM. Many were from outside the area and discharged here from hospitals or unknown to CHUM or doubled up. So it was not, but we were responsible for isolation and quarantine of anyone who was homeless, any adult who was homeless that had COVID. Overall, for ourselves, we had 1,200 people through CHUM and only 36 positive cases. So we felt we did a good job of reducing transmission and keeping the folks safe. In the early days of the pandemic, the fear was that COVID would just ravage the homeless community, and through unprecedented support from the state and everywhere else, that didn't happen. Here's actually at CHUM, we received $1,600,000 to help fight off COVID. All of that became our own, what I call our CHUM economic stimulus plan. The shelter, a lot of that went to the owners of the downtown Duluth Inn, so we could rent that as an isolation and quarantine shelter. Food, all of that went to the Duluth Grill to provide food for our shelter, so people didn't have to scrounge for food and could stay in. So that was our economic stimulus for the restaurant industry. The staffing was our economic stimulus for people who were unemployed because of the pandemic. We hired them to do isolation and quarantine, round-the-clock staffing if we needed them. The hygiene was more for us to keep our PPE and cleanliness and stuff like that. So we got, again, unprecedented support to keep this COVID at bay, and then we could put it back into economic benefit to others in the community. Steve O'Neill Apartments, 44 families with children live there. It opened in 2014. What's important for you to know about that is that the average length of stay for people who are there now is almost 3 years, 33 months, and people usually leave after about 2 years. And pretty much everyone there had been homeless for over a year, or many times long-term homeless or chronically homeless. And so maintaining housing stability for 2 or 3 years, and then going on to another positive housing solution. So I could say pretty much this working. One of the things I'm proudest about is we have 69 kids there now, 26 are under age 5, and every single one of them was either born there or under 1 when they moved in. And so in the attempt to reduce child homelessness and infant homelessness, provide people with those kids with what they need to thrive, we've done a good job at that. It's expensive in some ways. It's $587,000 a year, which is about $1,100 a month per household. The other thing that we're proud of is a couple years ago, we had 29 children in out-of-home placement, and there's an argument that supportive housing helps families get back together because they're safer, and now we only have 4. So that's a good stat. Duluth Inn, you may have heard, we're going to buy this to provide 43 units of permanent supportive housing for elderly folks 65 and up who are experiencing homelessness or who have disabilities at younger ages. Pretty excited about that. Hope to close this month, maybe next. Our legislative advocacy is to provide the support for what we do in shelters. This year, $18 million is in conference. I don't know if it's moved out yet, but the last I heard in conference committee, this only amounts to about $900 per person per year. So it's not. It looks like a lot of money, but it doesn't really go very far. The $50 million in bonding to build new shelters that failed to get consideration this year. So what you can do is help us teach that homelessness is a public health crisis. It's not amenable just to philanthropic solutions alone. We'd love it to, support the affordable housing and shelter investment at the Minnesota legislature, and we include that in the Duluth and St. Louis County days. We really need it. When I do the math about ending homelessness in Duluth, right now it's costing about $250,000 per unit, which is to build new units, which you can all gasp at that as I do. We have 1,000 people when we're on the waiting list, 1,000 households, so that gets us to $250 million. Supportive services is $500,000 per 50 units per year to help people keep housed. Bring It Home Minnesota is something I really want to support in the next couple of years. This is an idea so that Minnesota would invest 3% of its budget in housing. This would be a housing rental subsidy for the 500,000 Minnesota households who pay more than 30% of their income for rent This is sponsored by Beacon Interfaith, which is CHUM's partner down in the Twin Cities. Happy to answer questions about that. We want to get that passed in the next 5 years. Another thing where you can really help is to advocate and invest in additional treatment opportunities for mental and chemical health. And please join us at the table. The Clarity Project, for example, is a county-wide or region-wide actually effort to improve mental health treatment and response as a community. Learn more about what's really facing us and what's driving the current level of homelessness. The city puts out a great housing indicator report every year. The 2020 has just been released. Join us to fight systems that create poverty and illness and fight poverty, not the poor. And what we try to remember is if you're not being kind, you're actually doing harm. And lighten it up a little bit. We're going to do the Rhubarb Festival again this year, June 26th, up at Copper Top, not at First Lutheran this year. It's going to be a mixed hybrid model. There'll be some rhubarb, not as much as always, but just want to invite you to be there. So that's the overview of CHUM.
There was one question, and that is just in regards to the Clarity Project. If you could just, before we move on to the next speaker, you had mentioned like have a seat at the table of that. Can you share a little bit more about what that is?
Sure, that's something we've been working on for about 4 years. Do you want me to get my camera back up?
Sure.
Many of you have known about the Community Intervention Group, which is our particular community response for people experiencing homelessness who have high contact with the police department and hospitals and things like that. This Clarity Project was really called together by the hospitals and the medical community about what do we need to do to improve our response to mental health, both crisis and urgent care and chronic. And so there are a group of about 50 people who, at times, there's 30 organizations. We are going to be building a hub that will be a one-stop shop for people to come in. It'll be a living room model. It'll be culturally sensitive. It won't be a place where you just go and get referred someplace else. There's a link on the St. Louis County website, which I'll find and put in the chat to read about it. We did get bonding for that building. I'm really happy about it. I've been advocating to get housing as part of it. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but just to help deal with the enormous burden of mental illness that we're seeing right now.
Thank you so much. We're encouraging other questions in the chat or Q&A, and we're going to move from Lee right now to Seth Courier at the Damiano Center, and we're just going to move right into his presentation as well. So welcome again, Seth.
Thanks, and thanks everyone. It's good to be here. So I'm going to quickly go through what the programs Damiano offers, and then just a little bit about what we've done during COVID. So we've been open since 1982. We started out as just the community kitchen. It was called the Soup Kitchen at the time, but now we've grown to 8 different programs. We have our community kitchen, our kids kitchen, our summer food core, our free store, our clothes that work, our community services, our hygiene unit, and health realization. Our mission is with respect and compassion, we honor the dignity of all people and strengthen our community by providing essential services to individuals and families who are in need. We do that through our values of welcoming people in need without judgment, serving them in the least intrusive way possible. That's really important to us. It really helps promote dignity. Damiano promotes respect for all people in our workplace and practices, and through our service to individuals. We strive to meet the needs of people we serve by getting to know them personally and responding to their changing needs. Damiano is an excellent steward of resources. We demonstrate honesty, integrity, and accountability in the way we use the resources in all relationships, dealings, and transactions. So before COVID happened, this is what our community kitchen looked like. We had lots of tables, lots of 6 chairs at the table, lots of volunteers coming in and serving and cutting up everything and making all the food and not wearing masks. And so we had about 800 volunteers a year that would help to make the Damiano happen. And so a lot of that was in the community kitchen. since COVID's happened, a lot has changed. Immediately, we had closed our doors outside, but we started serving all of our meals outside, bagged lunches. Before COVID, we used to serve 13 meals a week to everyone, and then 4 additional meals to kids and their families through Kids Kitchen. Immediately when COVID happened, we switched those 4 meals that were for Kids Kitchen only, and we opened that up to everyone. So we had 17 meals a week that we were serving outside, bagged lunches right away. We never missed a meal in all of COVID. And then in about June, we realized there were a couple meals that weren't being met within the community. And so we added on 2 additional breakfasts. And so we moved to serving 19 of 21 meals a week out of the Damiano throughout Kids Kitchen. And then, so we've done bagged meals for quite some time. And then in June, we switched to having hot meals served outside. And that's what Flora has here. Flora's our kitchen manager. And so that's an example of what a hot meal looks like. We'd have a hot dish in a small bin, and then a cold salad and things like that in an additional one. We were also able to partner with some local organic farmers, as well as our summer food corps. So we grew some of our own vegetables, and then we had organic farmer would bring in vegetables, and we were able to give out directly over 3,000 pounds of um, fresh vegetables to people this summer as well. And then, so that's our kitchen, and that's our community kitchen and our kids kitchen combined for the meals that we had done during the pandemic. Then we have 2 additional clothing programs: our Clothes That Work and our free store. Free store is open to anybody to come anytime we're open and take a bag of clothes a day. In the pandemic, we've had to limit the hours a little bit so people can come in and take 2 bags of clothes a day. Our Clothes That Work is for people who have interviews coming up or are currently employed, and they can come and get the clothes that they need for their employment. And that might be business casual, but it also might be scrubs or black clothes for working in food service, or um, construction clothes and steel toe boots. So it provides a lot of different things that are needed there. We have our community services. This is our kind of catch-all. It's where we give out household items, blankets, pots, pans, cups, towels, microwaves, coffee pots, hygiene, transportation help. We give out mail for people who need mailboxes, referral to other agencies. So it's kind of our catch-all and giving out lots of different things to lots of people. We added our hygiene unit in this year, and I have to give props to Lee, because Lee got the ball rolling on this. And so Lee was able to do this has been a conversation for years, but Lee had done some research, and we partnered together to write a grant, and then Damiano took it over once we got the grant, and we're able to open this portable hygiene unit. There's 6 units. There's 3 on this side and 3 on the other side, and it's open 5 days a week from 9 to 3 p.m. And people can come and take a shower or use the toilet, and everything is provided for them in order to do that. And that's been amazing to be able to have. And we were only able to do that because of COVID. We were able to buy it using COVID money, and then we're able to operate it using some COVID money as well. So it's been very, very awesome to be able to do. We have Health Realization as well, and that's our program that is for people who are overcoming any barriers. A lot of people use it for chemical dependency, and when we're not in COVID, our groups are up to 120 people that are attending. But during COVID, we've had to modify that, and we've done outside groups throughout last summer, and then we've done inside groups at less than 10, and so we've just modified it, but we've kept it going for most of the time. This is our Kids Kitchen. It's a after-school program where kids can come and just be themselves and let down their guard, and they're served a meal. But during COVID, we've had to modify that. Our space is too small. We work very closely with public health, and up until here in the next, we're going to hopefully be opening back up in June. But we've just been serving meals to kids and their families throughout all of COVID. And we did a lot of summer programming last year, and art camp and yoga outside, and all kinds of different stuff. But we're going to be inside again very soon as we're working with public health. And then we have our summer food corps. This is our youth employment program where kids raise organic food, learn how to raise organic food, and then they help out with the little kids in the afternoon, and they get their Serve Safe certification, and they learn how to make food, and they learn how to work with kids. And so it's a really great empowerment program. All of our stuff that comes into Damiano is done through donations. It's all brought in and sorted by volunteers and got back out to people. Just some quick data. Of the people that we serve, 42% rent, 7 own their own home, 10% live with family or friends, 14 are couch hopping, 17 emergency shelter, 15 transitional housing, 9% are living in their car or outdoors, and 7% are other. Now you'll look at those numbers and that does not add up to 100%. That's because many people click multiples of those because their reality uses a lot of those things. When I first got here, I was a little surprised that 42% were renting, but I've come to love that because what it does is it allows the Damiano to support people to be able to get some of the essentials that they need so that they can continue to pay rent, so that they can continue to pay their bills. We talk a lot about housing first in Duluth, and the Damiano and the other services around this area we're all there to help people continue to stay in their homes, which is the most important. Because just like Lee said, when families are in their homes, kids get back with their families, and that's so important. And so we're one of those pieces that helps to keep people in their homes, and that's beautiful. We have 36% that are employed, some of them having many multiple jobs, part-time jobs. For those that are not employed, the reasons that they list that they're not employed are disability, mental health, abuse, and criminal record. And so there are a lot of barriers that are keeping people from being employed, but there's a lot of people that are employed as well. So it's just we're there to walk alongside and to support. And I already mentioned a few of these things, and I think I'm getting close to my time. So ways to partner, to volunteer. We've had some volunteers back throughout the pandemic, and then we're slowly moving towards being able to have even more. Get the word out, support through donations and sustenance partners. Lots of ways to partner. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Seth. I'm sure that the police chief chose that apron as well. Is that right, Seth?
Oh, yes, he chose it.
Quick question to you as well before we move on to Jordon. The Kids Kitchen, any idea what your expectation is for numbers this year?
I don't know because it's been a year, and so we're interested to see that. We're planning for as if it would be like it used to be, but we just don't know. I mean, there's kids that have moved away from the area. There's new families in the neighborhood, and so we really don't know. But we are planning and moving forward as if it's going to be our numbers, and then we'll adjust if needed. But I don't have a way to get a number on that. We have seen lots of kids and their families coming up and getting meals at that time, at the normal Kids Kitchen time, because we serve every dinner. And so we've seen lots of kids and families, and they've come in and got clothes and all those kind of things, but we'll just have to see, and we'll be opening here in June. So
okay, great. Okay, well, thanks so much, Seth. And we are going to move on to Jordon Johnson with Lifehouse. And welcome, Jordon. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. See if I can get this going. Give me 1 sec here. This went away before. I don't know. Technology seems to always show up at the moments. I'm just gonna go with this. I am unable to get it to start from the beginning. Oh, look at that. Maybe. Magic. So thank you for your patience. It's good to be with you all today. My name is Jordon Johnson. I'm the Executive Director of Lifehouse. And I just want to give you a little insight about Lifehouse. We are celebrating our 30-year anniversary this year. So we just had our celebration of success event last week to kind of honor our 30-year anniversary. So we have been around since 1991. We are an agency that provides no cost supportive housing and comprehensive services to homeless youth and street youth ages 14 to 24. We know that there's probably 100 plus, maybe even more, young people who are on the streets of Duluth every night. Our vision is that no youth will be left alone or homeless, uncared for, or fending for themselves on the streets. We deeply believe in kind of making sure our young people know that we care and love about them, and that we are always here. Our programs are kind of, we have 4 kind of core programs. One is our drop-in youth center. Youth can come in, we have basic needs, we have a meal that we provide, and I'll kind of go into this a little bit more detail. We have a community residential housing program. We have 2 residential sites, the Loft, which is our emergency shelter for youth ages 15 to 19. And then we have Soul House, which is a house for survivors of sexual exploitation and human trafficking. And though that house is a kind of a 2-year transitional housing program where young people can land for a couple of years. We also have a mental health and wellness team. And then we have what's called our Futures Education and Employment Program. And so we really are believe in kind of wrapping our arms around our young people once they walk through our door. So once they walk through our door, they have immediate access to all the other services that we provide. During COVID, at the onset, we put a lot of measures in place. We reached out to the St. Louis County Public Health Department, and I just want to give a huge shout out to our St. Louis County Public Health Department and Minnesota Department of Health, who have just been phenomenal partners with us through this navigating all that we've all walked through. Many of our staff kind of shifted to home for a short bit. We slowly quieted our youth center, but we never shut our doors. So we might have handed out meals, made sure people had items to go, but never did we kind of close our doors to our young people. Our residential sites are 24/7, 365. And so they were on site, active. Our loft and shelter has been full since the pandemic. And by the end of May, we have put in practices to kind of test our youth and staff encountered cities or anyone who presented symptoms. Meals, our drop-in center had meals to go. We have bags of groceries if needed, especially on Fridays when we knew it was a long weekend and many places were closed or was difficult to get to. We ensured that young people had groceries who are in our housing program. And people could come pick up their mail as well. Our housing program provided groceries. We went and packed up groceries during the pandemic, during the stay-at-home order. We provided them with masks and any other PPE that they needed. And we also continued to ensure that they knew that all our supportive services were available. Our housing team, in a short period of time, kind of did about 42 housing, we're able to house about 42 young people or young families throughout the kind of stay-at-home pandemic, and navigated that all virtually with our kind of local partners. This is kind of what our housing program offers. This kind of prevention funds, advocacy, emergency shelter, permanent supportive housing. We have 50 units of housing that we are provide supportive housing. And in a couple of years, the Brewery Creek project will be developed, and we will add an additional 32 units. So in a couple of years, we will be up to 82 units of housing within our housing program. Our mental health and wellness team, that is a picture of Agate. He's our therapy dog that is connected to one of our therapists. So we have 6 mental health and wellness practitioners. We have 2 licensed social workers. We have 2 peer recovery specialists on site. And then we have a licensed alcohol and drug counselor. We offer, during the pandemic, we shifted to kind of offering what's called wellness walks. So young people would be able to kind of walk with our wellness team, be outside. And that has become integrated into now our kind of practices here at Lifehouse. We offer indigenous circles. Virtual connections are happening, continue to happen. Some of the activities that took place is we kind of developed rock gardens. We ensured that young people had a way to connect to treatment. If young people need a Rule 25, which is something that's needed to get into treatment, we have our LADAC is able to do that. And then we also have recovery groups. We work closely with like Recovery Alliance Duluth and some of the treatment centers to ensure that young people have access to the necessary services that they need. And again, I think what's different about us is we do not charge for our services and we do not require insurance. So that means our staff can work for as long as they need to with a young person, how many ever times they need to is a week, and which goes a long way to ensuring that they know that they are cared for and that they are provided the necessary services or resources needed to get to where they need to be. Our Futures program provides kind of alternative ways of self-sufficiency where young people have kind of been disconnected over the course of trying to do things virtually during the pandemic. And so our education and employment case managers have really stepped up over the course of the last year. We partnered with Denfeld Dash, it's Denfeld's after school happenings program. We were able to house them in our Imaginarium building, which I'll talk about here in a minute, where they had a site to go to when the schools were closed. Young people came and landed, even if it was a few of them, they were able to get through the coursework they needed to, and then we continued to kind of work with them now that they're back in the school environments at Denfeld. But the education program offers support for GED. We have had a lot of young people complete their GEDs. They can get assistance in any of our residential programs for anybody who might still be attending school and make sure that they get graduated or get the credentials they need or apply to go to school if they want to go to post-secondary schools. On our employment program, we have people who needed help filing unemployment, getting resumes, applying for jobs. And then we have what's called the Legitimate Hustle program, where we actually pay young people and they are part of our Legitimate Hustle program. We have two social enterprises, our Limitless Candles and the recycling jewelry that they work on site, and they have a little retail shop. I welcome you all to stop by. It's on First Avenue and First Street. Just kind of walk down the side of First Avenue and come on in, and they will welcome you into their shop to buy candles or jewelry. And they do that all on site here at Lifehouse. You can also order that online as well. But it allows our participants to learn kind of entrepreneurship and just kind of basic job skills, operating their own small business, and kind of just having the support they need. And we are certainly partner with some of the local businesses to kind of help support them as they get jobs out in the community. We work with SOAR Career Solutions as well to kind of connect them to that resource. And so I just want to also give a huge shout out to our partners in the community who kind of collectively work with us to kind of help our young people kind of navigate the early kind of 20s, moving into kind of their later 20s, and just know that they have the support behind them. And I just want to kind of point out that it's one thing to say, yep, we can house young people and we can get them housed. But what really allows them to stay housed and become sustainable in their housing is all the wraparound services that we provide. And so that is ensuring that they have mental health and wellness services, they have some opportunity to complete their education, their employment, that they have some basic needs or a place to do their laundry if needed. And that is really what has worked really well. And the Lifehouse staff are phenomenal at doing that, and they do it really well and know how to kind of care for a young person along the way. These are just some photos of kind of during the pandemic of missing people. It was a little weird to have a quiet space for a while, but it's really nice to have our young people back on site and and they have been inactive for a long time. And then I just also want to say we're able to kind of expand our campus to include what's called Lifehouse's Imaginarium building, which is right across the street on First Avenue, where we will kind of be renovating that space in that building. But we were able to offer a COVID testing site over there for the county public health, and then that turned into a vaccine clinic through the public health as well. It's a space that community partners will be using moving forward. And then we've also partnered with Svalia Yoga. So there's a yoga studio up there that our yoga youth have access to once a week as well. So we are excited about that possibility, just kind of really enhancing our area in the downtown vicinity here. So that's what I have for you. I will stop sharing that and just appreciate you all being here.
Great. Thank you, Jordon. I know there were a couple of comments just even about the candles and how great they are. So the location is on First Avenue West. What are there specific hours?
They work from like 12 to 4. But again, like you can order online anytime, and they will kind of accommodate pickup if needed. So.
Wonderful. Great. I know I have some of those as well. So thank you.
Yeah.
We'll bring all of our panelists up. There are a couple of questions that have come up. I think one of them is, what do you see as unmet community needs or gaps for the future? And looks like Lee would like to start us out.
Yeah, thanks everyone for being here. I just think that several years ago, we all identified warming centers as a big missing ingredient in our community. And then over the last 3 years, we've been able to put together a plan so that people have a safer space to go in the winter, capitalized by the HRA making available one of their community centers out in Lincoln Park as a permanent site, and getting COVID money to remodel it to include showers and space for people permanently. And so I'd really like to start the same conversation about, is it time for us to think about sanctioned encampments? I know it's really hard. There's so many people camping now, and I'm not an advocate for camping at all, but there are over 100 people out who are doing it. And would it be better, or could we figure out as a community a common place? I've seen where people put Quonset huts up, and then people can put their tents inside it. We could have the hygiene facilities there. We could have the medical care there. It would just be a place where it would be safer for people, and also keep people out of the woods. And so I just love to talk with people who'd be interested in trying to figure out how to do that. Other communities have done it. I don't know if anyone's done it 100%, but I'd really like to have that as a conversation in Duluth. That, and then other sites for medically assisted treatment. We're working on that at CHUM as well. So, and then if we're going to advocate for affordable housing, obviously youth, but there are more than 800 single individuals who are waiting for housing in the city of Duluth. And while it's great to prioritize families, the biggest group are single individuals. And that's why we're doing the Downtown Duluth Inn.
That you see as unmet community needs or gaps in the future?
I'll just say real quickly, if that's all right. I think one thing that we're really thinking about is and putting forth is really some really cultural relevant kind of practices and healing practices, specifically for our young people. 65% of our youth are youth of color, and so we are seeing a significant amount of our sometimes our most marginalized community members, right? And so I think that's one of the things that I think we are trying to lift up and elevate, and not come from a deficit model, but really they have so much power and so much resiliency that exists. And I think we're really trying to think how to pull in and incorporate even our elders and multi-generational kind of healing components that I think can really be beneficial for our community at large. And so oftentimes it's, again, we hit this kind of like, let's go to housing. And I hear Lee, yep, we need housing. We absolutely, like, I want to echo that wholeheartedly. But there's also this place that I feel like we don't really know the impact of what COVID has had on all our folks, and particularly our young
Yep.
people and our young families. We have about 40% of our women are pregnant and or parenting. We have a lot of young families, and if we're going to interrupt generations of trauma, and like we have an opportunity here to kind of really bolster our kind of cultural practices, relevant practices that speak to our young people that are walking through our doors. So that is a gap we're trying to figure out and kind of put forth at this time.
And then I'll go to Seth.
I'd support that too.
Yeah, I support both what Lee and Jordan said. I would also say, I mean, this is dealing with the people that we work with every day. It's a community effort, and so I think that there's some. I mean, as we look at this as a community and we want to embrace this as a community, I think if more of us could get on board with maybe community-wide mental health training and community-wide maybe de-escalation training, or where we look at it as a community effort and say, hey, this isn't just somebody's problem. It's how can we all do this together? Because mental health is not just it affects everyone. It's not just within the homeless population or the low income population, or and so I think that would be a really beautiful thing to say, hey, as a community, we're coming together and we are learning how to recognize mental health, how to walk beside someone experiencing mental health, and the Clarity Project is going to be a step in that direction, and I think that that's a beautiful thing, and I can't wait for that to happen. But yeah, I think there's room to grow there as a community where we can all do that together too.
So when we talk about as a community, I mean, we've seen some increases, excuse me, in homeless individuals in skywalks and in parking ramps in our downtown. How do we best work together to get them the services that they need, and sometimes those services that they refuse?
I'd like to take a stab at that. There's no way in our society to force people to accept services. And so we need to so I'd like to just say that there's no way to do that within people's rights, which makes me want to say we need to have a different kind of conversation, because for my aunt and my beloved stepmother, both of whom had dementia, it was considered normal for us to have them in what amounted to a locked facility for their safety, but we can't get there. For other people who are equally impaired, because there's no path for that. And I'm not saying lock everybody up. I could get in real trouble with everybody here. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that we need, for the very chronically very ill people, and I know all of us know some of the people you're talking about. We've tried civil commitment, we've tried long-term, but there is no long-term care option for them. And so their dignity is robbed every single day that they're forced to pee in the skywalks. Their brain is not their friend. Their mind is not their friend. And I can't even imagine what it would be like to go through a day without my mind being my friend. And so how can we have a compassionate conversation that says, for a small group of people who are very profoundly ill and not at a point of choice, just like my aunt was, just like my stepmother was, how can we provide a supportive environment that keeps them safe? And the least restrictive environment. Well, the least restrictive environment for my aunt, who was Arizona's first pediatric cardiologist. I mean, she was an amazing person, but dementia robbed that of her. And we were able to, put her a place where she could stay safe until she died. We need to have the same kind of conversation for people who are profoundly ill in their brains with a different type of illness. And I don't know how to start that conversation even. And people can communicate. I mean, and in terms of, services is not always where it's at. I mean, they're available, but a lot of our folks are pre-contemplative. They don't have a sense of hope about what difference would it make. They go to treatment and come back and they're right in the CHUM shelter on the streets again, using again, not a surprise. So kind of the continuum of care of that.
Are you comparing that kind of to the San Marco?
Well, we have a San Marco for people who are active users of other drugs. Can we have a San Marco for people who have a mental illness and make sure that we can actually keep them in a safe environment? And it is against their will because their chooser, their will part is the thing that is broken. And again, I'm on very treacherous ground here, but I'm just telling you because I don't know where else to go with it.
Jordon, I think you had something you wanted to
I
add?
can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, I think Jordon wanted to add
Yeah.
something.
I think it takes a lot of patience. And I think that's what we learned here at Lifehouse is to be kind of patient. But I think there's also a piece for our age group that there's the possible onset of schizophrenia for many of our young people. And that like we said, you can't force somebody to kind of go to treatment, but I think there is a way maybe we could have a larger community conversation at some point around how to collectively uh, show the compassion and patience and what does this look like and what might it entail. And I think as we wrap ourselves around our young people, I think as a community, if we could wrap ourselves around the folks who are struggling and showing up in these spaces, I think that would be a really phenomenal opportunity. That's something I see we can work together on moving forward.
Yeah, people aren't choosing that level of misery.
And then I would also say, and this is not to, it's not to make light of it and say this is how we fix it, but I would also say, Christy, you mentioned the skywalks. So I walk the skywalks. I walk around downtown all the time to appointments, to meetings, all those kind of things, and it's amazing. I would say if you see somebody in the skywalk who appears to be homeless or appears to be low income, treat them just like you would anybody else. Smile at them, say hi, nod. That goes a long way. People get real used to being ignored, and just now. Granted, there are times where there are dangerous situations, and I'm not saying, "Hey, put yourself in a dangerous situation." But I would say 1% of the time when I'm walking around that I've even that I've felt even like remotely like it was a dangerous situation. But I also deal with this all the time. But I'm just saying, have a conversation. So I was just talking to someone the other day, and there's people asking for money and things like that, and say, hey, you know what? I don't have any cash on me because I don't carry any cash on me. But I say, hey, here's the places that are serving a meal right now. Educating ourselves on where the services are, just so we can remind people because they might be new to town, or maybe they've forgotten, or whatever. And just to say, hey, but here's where this is, and here's where this is. They're serving right now. You can go there. And even just having that conversation or just smiling. I was driving this weekend, and I just smiled out the window at some people who were sitting on the side of the road, and I rolled down my window and said, hey, I don't have any cash. And they said, hey, you know what? A smile's good enough. And they started laughing. And that's beautiful. That's an interaction. And sometimes people just want to be noticed. And in doing that, it de-escalates all kinds of stuff. And just having a calm demeanor and just saying, what's going on? Just asking, not assuming, just asking. It goes a long way.
I do want to give a shout out to our clean and safe team downtown because
Yep.
I know that the team is usually a first contact for a lot of individuals that are on the street and do a great job with that. So I want to say thanks to our team. And I know that the police department does a great job with that as well. A quick question that came up, what about opportunities or strengths that came out of COVID? Is there anything that was something that you're able to say was a strength that really came out of COVID that you didn't know about before? And Seth, you want to start us out?
Yeah, I would say the hygiene unit for sure. We wouldn't have been able to get that without it, without COVID. And so being able to, that's just a direct one. But I think there's so many things. I think as a community, we realize how resilient we are, how we can be creative. I think all of our services are going to look a little different on the other side of COVID, modified to be even more accessible. And so I think that there was a lot of things where we'd be like, you know what? I don't know if we can do that, or we didn't have the time to think about how we could do that. And now our services can be even more accessible. than they have been in the past. And so I think that we'll be seeing the effects of that for a while now. And we'll be still discovering some of those for some time to come. So that's just a couple of things, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the main thing which I think is never going to change and never going to go back is the new partnership between the Department of Health and Public Health and Housing. And the public health folks have always said, well, housing is a social determinant of health. That's kind of been an abstraction. Now we really understand what that's like. And so try to see housing and homelessness and poverty as a public health issue, and having the teams of people in those different agencies understanding it from a common perspective, that brings a whole different point of view, which I think is just great. And as we went through the COVID, at first we were testing, and eventually we got to be our own testers, and then we became, then we, we're about 90% vaccinated at the CHUM shelter right now, and now we're talking about how can we, screen and do AIDS treatment? How can we screen and do syphilis? How can we screen and do all the, we just make public health much more part of what we do. And so I'm very excited about that. We've got good partnerships with the Family Medical Clinic and the Hope Clinic from med school. Is really providing better medical care and changing the idea that medicine can now come to us rather than us have to go to them. That's a huge step. And obviously it's a two-way street, but I'm just saying those are the things that really enhanced during COVID.
I'll say for us, I recognize that we all walked through COVID, but we all walked through one of the most public racial justice uprising last year as well. And so I think if you kind of weave those two together, I think we were exposed to just the disparities that really exist within our community. And so I think I agree, Lee, like the partnership with public health and the state, and even with our local healthcare facilities, has been just solidified to me in so many ways. And we've leaned on them, and they've shown up in ways that I cannot put words to it. But like there's a way here that we have also been able to see that we are an incredibly resilient community, and for us, we focus on young people, are super resilient, but also didn't flinch very much. And they came together as a community in so many ways within our housing programs. But it also gave a glimpse, I think, for the larger community to have a sense of what it feels like to be kind of isolated and alone and, struggling. Like this is what our folks go through on a daily basis in many ways. And so just kind of I think that's an opportunity in this kind of different way of thinking of opportunities, but it gives some insight of like, this is what our young people go through every day. And like, when you start to care for one another and care as a community, transformation can really happen and things can really make a difference. And so I just want to kind of highlight that we've walked through the last year and had these two humongous kind of aspects that have kind of come together, kind of cracked us open in some ways, and we can either like move forward and delve deep, or we can kind of stitch it together and kind of move on. But I hope that we have just kind of said, we're going to delve deep and we're going to do this work together. And that's what it feels like. Our partnerships with CHUM, Damiano, and all our other community partners have just become really kind of even more solidified than they were. And I'm just really grateful for that. And so there's a lot that's coming out of this that we just don't even also know quite yet as well. So.
That's Jordon. We just have a couple of minutes. So for each of you, maybe just 30 seconds, how do you think maybe there can be stronger partnerships with the business community, or how can we work as a community to help alleviate some of these concerns, help to provide services to individuals or support?
What I would really love is some people who are experts in business planning work with us on the so-called 10-year plans to end homelessness. If you just look at those things, they are not designed as a business plan. they don't actually produce. They don't that it doesn't get to the end. You know, we've been on a 10-year plan to end homelessness, but if you look at the way we go about that plan, we're on an 80-year plan to end homelessness. And I really think that there's some, you know, get a little different view about if we really were going to do this, what would it take? And then do it like I mean, we're all part of the business community. We run businesses. But someone who's really expert at, you know, bringing on new lines, I'd love to talk with them and look at the housing policies and housing steps and say, what would it really take? I mean, even something to help us. I wrote a paper, and the alignment of Minnesota's investment in housing tax credit projects for affordable housing does not line it up at all with the level of homelessness in communities around our state. Well, that's weird. You know, there's a policy to help end it, but it doesn't line up with what's needed. That's confusing to me. Anyhow, so that's what I'd like. I'd like some business planning brains with me on that.
Jordon? Anything from you, from your end? Or Seth, either one of you?
I'll just say, I think one of the things I can think about, we have young people who are going to be looking for jobs and looking for future jobs. And if there's people we can partner with in regards kind of helping them transition into some kind of positions. I know there's a lot of job opportunities out there. And then work with our employment case managers. So, you know, sometimes they make mistakes and just be patient with them, but, you know, kind of have that partnership where they start to gain some independence and self-sufficiency would be great as one really good thing we could start to really kind of do. And I think, yeah, the community has shown up, the business community has shown up in some ways. And I would love to kind of think around a community-wide conversation moving forward to kind of how we end homelessness in our area.
We'll let Seth have the last thought.
Yeah, I would continue what Jordon was saying there. One of the ways to end homelessness is to provide opportunity. And so I would challenge us all, and myself included, because this is something that we're working actively at the Damiano, is to rethink what are those barriers that are keeping us from employing someone. So sure, somebody might have a criminal record. There's a lot of people who don't have criminal records out there who should have criminal records, and probably a lot of us sitting in this room. And to rethink, okay, sure, there are some criminal records that we should, you know, be to not allow, but there's a lot of things that are from way in the past, or people have done their work, they've done their time, and they have changed. And to give people a chance and it might take a little extra work, and it might take a little extra training, and it might take some more walking beside. But if we're talking about this as a community-wide commitment, that's a beautiful way that we can partner together and to kind of navigate this together. And if people need ideas about how that looks, I mean, you can call all three of us, and we can talk through, like, what does that look like actually as an employer hiring somebody with a background, or with some mental health, or with some housing barriers, or who maybe isn't even homeless. We've done that. And so what does that look like? And so we'd love to talk about that. And then I would also say, visit our organizations, get to know some people, come in and get to know some names, because you spend some time around these places, you'll start to know the names of the people you see in the skywalk, and you can call them by name, and then it's a whole different conversation. Or just ask somebody their name in the skywalk, and that's a way to do it too. So then you see them the next day, you can call them by name. Calling somebody by their name is so important, and it provides so much dignity. So that's all I have.
Well, thank you all. We are right on time for wrapping up. So I appreciate you sharing your insights and what's been going on at your organizations. I encourage anyone who has additional questions, they can reach out to us or to any of the panelists. And again, this is something that we record, so we also provide that for folks. If anybody has missed it and you wish to share it with them, it will be provided as a recording as well. So with that, thank you again, and have a great day for all of you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.